Please feel free to interrupt me and ask any questions. Today I'm going to be talking about management and stock assessment in the U.S. and Canada. I'm not an expert in Canada, but I have information working with scientists from Canada, so I'll do my best to answer your questions. I do have the contact information for my Canadian counterpart, Rod Bradford. It's for each species. And with each review, the first thing you do is a stock assessment to see what the status or health of the stock is, so you know whether or not management is needed. Here are the current management, generalized. These vary by state. States have to follow what the ASMFC says, but they can be more conservative if they want to. There's also, what's not listed here is the quota that was started in 2015 for the commercial landings. And in Maine, which has the only glass eel fishery, they have a quota for that glass eel fishery as well. And this is just the name of a document I have if you're interested in more. And it's also available online on the ASMFC website. They have a lot of documents on their website. Next, I'm going to talk to you about the data, what we collect, and the information for our stock assessments. So the basic needs that you need for a stock assessment are the same everywhere, right? They're fisheries dependent, and these are fisheries data that depend on the fisheries. They're coming right from the commercial and recreational fishermen. And there we're interested in total removals. Basically, it's a body count. We want to know how many dead eels are coming out of the water. We also have fisheries independent data, and these are your scientific surveys. And from that, we want an index of or just a trend in what's going on in the population over time, and also basic biological data. Now, you can get basic biological data from the fisheries as well. We just haven't been very good at collecting that so far. Both the United States and Canada have dedicated a lot of time and effort into collecting data from the fisheries, so much so that we consider the information at this time a complete census of commercial landings. So Canada requires commercial logbooks for both their yellow eel and their glass eel fisheries, or they also call it elver fisheries. They require detailed daily information on their trips. And I'm going to show you an example of the form. I added the forms in. Shannon indicated I had them in my presentation. So this is a sample logbook for yellow eel fishery, and look for information like date, what waterway that the eels were harvested from, whether it was tidal or non-tidal, the GPS location if you have it recorded, and then information on the quantity and bycatch, and just other details that would be useful for the fisheries.
Sorry, this is very important information. So who write this work?
Who created the form?
Yeah, this form is by fishermen or?
No,
the government.
The government created the form, and the fishermen fill it out.
Interview or something. So
they get a log. They send the fishermen a logbook, and the fishermen fill it out. Did that answer your question?
yes, it's a government officer writing this logbook.
Yes, the government
so
wrote it.
An interview or some information from a fisherman.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And this is just to show you a sample. It's very similar for their glass eel fishery. Just to show you they're collecting detailed information, and that all goes into a database. The United States has mandatory reporting for our eel fisheries as well. Everyone has to have a logbook, and they have to report daily trip information and also information on effort. One of the problems we found with this is that the different states record effort in different ways. Some record the number of gear, such as the number of pots. Some record the number of hours that were fished. Some might record the number of trips. The problem with that is when we come to the stock assessment and we want to calculate a fisheries dependent trend, we can't compare it among the states because the effort is different. so your denominator is different. It's still informative, but we can't blend them all together to get sort of a combined index. And some states also require dealer reporting, and these are the buyers who have to record how much they bought from a harvester, and also some details like the fishermen have to report. And then if a state has dealer and harvester reporting, they have to compare, and often there's differences that they have to reconcile, and that can be a difficulty. And here's a sample eel report from the state I come from North Carolina. It's very simple. We ask for the number of pots, and we also ask for soak time. Then just the pounds of eels, the dealer or who bought it, and then a trip ticket number, and that's the number that's assigned by the government. And then at the bottom of the form, we ask, when won't you be fishing for eel? Very simple. And all this goes into a database. And this is what the dealer or buyer reports. Yes?
So, I want to know, this is make this logbook by the commercial fisherman, by the one trip, and then the fishermen have submitted this document to the government.
No, the government sends blank ones to the fishermen, and the fishermen fill them out every month.
Okay.
And beside the fishermen, does the government hire a special person to becoming an numerator to record this?
We have a whole department that takes care of the data entry and analyzing the data. Yes, there's many. That's one of probably our biggest department is people entering those data and checking them and making sure there's no errors, and then calling them if there's a problem. Any other questions? And this, just to show you what our buyer report looks like. So we could coordinate, since North Carolina asked who bought it, it's easier for our state to match it up with the buyer. But just to show you the details we collect there. And this is a paper form, so just a piece of paper. We also have an electronic form, so if the fisherman has a computer and connection to the internet, I think it's much easier to submit it through an electronic way. And it also makes it easier for a data collection. Yes, please. I love questions.
This is very important for our project because we are designing this system. So this is dealer. This means it's a trader and also collecting the eel fisher.
He's buying them.
And it's to keep the living also. Middleman, and they have to keep the living.
They buy some live and
some,
and then some they process.
But so I understand this government request directly the trader to write in this report.
The government gives this to the buyers, and then the buyers fill it out and give it back to the government.
One time a month, one time.
I think these are monthly.
Monthly. And if you have information, how many traders in Canada?
That's a good question. I will have to get back to you on that. I don't know. I wouldn't even hazard a guess. Many.
And for becoming a trader, do you need a special permission?
Yes, you need to have a permit to be a buyer. Everyone needs permits for everything. Just want to tell you a little bit more about the recreational data collection program. We don't consider this a census or a complete, and if someone might stop you and give you an interview and ask you.
Is there any quota for specific irrigation for the recreational purposes?
Size limit, which I think is 9 inches.
This
Here what they did is they took their information from those log books that I showed you, and they mapped eel habitat for adult eels. This is a very simple thing you can do if you have information on where the eels are caught. Similar to what Shannon showed earlier, but not at the same level of detail. Again, they took their Elver log books or glass eel log books and mapped and used that to map glass eel habitat. Again, very simple thing that you can do. This table shows the eels that are infected with this. Just another simple thing you can determine from those log books versus catch, and then they fit a model to it. You can see that when your area increases, your catch increases. That's really simple. That makes sense. So more area, there's going to be more eels. Of course, you're going to catch more. And then the circles are proportional to the fishery effort in that area. And that was used in the weighting of this model. They have, Canada has a collaborative project between their Department of Fisheries, Ocean, and the industry that occurs in the East River Chester. So they have this small waterfall that's at the head of tide, which impedes the migration of the glass eels. They use different types of gear to intercept the glass eels, and that provides an estimate of annual recruitment past the commercial fishery that occurs downstream. And then here they collect weights, pigmentation, and environmental data. Then they use those data to create an index of recruitment. So you want to look at this blue line that's dashed. That's
They already adopt the system of the quota allocated to each fisherman.
in the to the different states. So each state gets a percentage of the quota.
Stop assessment.
What regulations? So you mean, well, we have quotas and we have size limits, gear and area restrictions. There are some season restrictions. It's hard to give specifics because it's every state and every province has different rules. But there are rules for eel because of the stock assessments.
Maybe from the data.
Based on the stock assessment data, annual balancing between natural mortality and fishing mortality, which is the up and down.
Is there any relation between both? We did not. That is a very good question.
From Loura Andrews. Regarding to the benchmark stock assessment, which is conducted every 5 years, any consideration why the peer review is conducted every 5 years? Maybe any robust justification or maybe robust reason, something like that, to mix it on once every 5 years. Maybe if maybe they then any what they call it, the incidental issue or something between the 5 years period, maybe in the second or third or fourth year, there is like a major issue happen in the fisheries. Then what will the council or the manager do to as a responsive management, something like that? Yes.
That's a great question and something that the stock assessment groups have asked. Why 5 years for every species? And because some species that are shorter lived, you might want to do more often because something might happen and that could affect the stock a lot sooner. And other species that are longer lived, maybe you want to, it might take a longer time for something to happen, so you want more time.
But if something major were to happen in between, the management board meets at least once a year, so they would be able to recommend doing an update or a stock assessment update or benchmark. So they do have that ability. And if something happened, they would likely recommend that.
So they will be more adaptive
Yes.
regarding to the situations.
Yes, the 5 year is just a guideline.
Okay, then from Silke.
Hello, yes, thank you. I'm interested in one of your slides. You are mentioning about the collaborative efforts to manage the stock across the border. Can you give us more detail? What kind of success story that you have implemented? In case of this region, we are trying to have something like a common or coordinated policy or measures to sustainable management of our share stock. If you can.
Specifically for eel, we've not yet been successful. There's been interest from the scientists on both sides, and I think the managers, which are generally above the scientists, they make the decisions. They understand the importance for it, but I don't think we found the right process. There are processes in place though that we can take advantage of, and I'm not sure why we haven't. So for Atlantic herring, as an example, that's the stock that we share with Canada. We have a process for doing a joint stock assessment and joint management with them. I don't have a good explanation for why we haven't followed that yet for American eagle.
Yes, Kim, please.
So just to remind you, there was a meeting recently in Dominican Republic where all of the eel range states for the Restrata got together to start to think about this. So we look at these management systems, we think they're very mature and we can learn from them, but actually some things they're very good at and some things they are still at the same level as everyone else. So in the case of joining together and understanding how to manage a pan-meeting stock, they're dealing with the same question that Southeast Asia is. So they're now trying to build a management umbrella and they're looking for the right mechanism to do it. Now they have a Sargasso Sea Commission has offered to do it, CMS has offered to do it, and many groups are offering to do it, but they have to find a group that suits their needs, and they also have to really get the range states to agree, because some of the range states, they're not even interested in eel yet. They're only starting to find out about what's really been going on in their areas. Some of the delegates at the meeting didn't even know that eel were being exported from their country. And only through the records in China that they found out actually, yes, some eel had been sent from their country already to China. So they are now struggling and trying to build this type of collaboration because they realize that one country can rely on another country to understand the status, but also every country needs to rely on each other not to spoil the status. So they're trying to do that now. So I think it's something that if you did this under CFDEC or something like that within Southeast Asia, you would be very respected for getting that type of arrangement together in a regional plan of action. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, for the comment. Any other question? Others? So, if there is any other question, so please give applause to Loura. Thank you very much for your presentation. So